Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Tim and Shipe Show. This is we are a part of the Press Play Podcast Network. Thank you so much for being a part of our show today. And this episode is brought to you by the Loft at Pex Hall. If you've listened to this podcast, you know you've heard us talk about the Loft at Pex Hall all season long. Even though it's a shorter season, we still want to show the Loft at Pex Hall all of our love. They are a beautifully renovated venue location where you can have weddings, you can have funerals, you can have baby showers, as Tim mentioned last week, baby showers, wedding showers, marriage showers, whatever kind of shower you want, the Loft at Pex Hall will have it ready for you. They have a list of wonderful caterers that you can use. They have access to a freight elevator where they can bring up everything. It's a third floor overlooking the beautiful town of Circleville, Ohio. Check out the Loft at Pex Hall. You're not going to regret it. But I've seen a lot of people use photographers to go up there and take wonderful pictures, anniversary pictures, wedding pictures, whatever it may be. It's just such a beautiful location. And since it's been restored back to its original glory, it's an early 19th century build. It's such a beautiful location with over 4,000 square feet. So check it out, the Loft at Pex Hall. You're not going to regret it. So just do it.
All right, everyone. If you're worried about inclement weather, you can trust Bella Freight to drop off your wet, slick load safely for you. If you're having a difficult time working that hard load to its destination, Bella Freight can slide in there and offer you some relief in the nick of time. If you find yourself in a sticky situation, Bella Freight can wipe the situation clean with ease and get you where you need to be. So check out Bella Freight on Facebook or online today. And now, on with the show.
Could be up to the offensive line. No, Prince's going to throw for it. Got to get it off. They go for the ball game. Touchdown! Touchdown! Michael Jenkins! Holy Buckeye! Tebow straight ahead into the end zone, and the Gators have put this one on ice.
Hello, and welcome to the Tim and Shipe Show. This is a college football podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Tim Jones and Aaron Shipe here. Tim Jones is a Florida Gator fan. I am an Ohio State Buckeye fan. And as you can imagine, we have a ton to talk about today, especially about the Florida Gators, shoes, and everything else in between. Thank you so much for joining us today. Tim Jones, what a sad day in Gainesville it was over the weekend. What's your first impressions coming out of that game?
I mean, honestly, it's just one of those games where I think we overlooked LSU playing on Alabama this coming weekend, and LSU played out of their minds shorthanded, and some really crazy plays in that game. Some of the weirdest interception I've ever seen in my life, a pick six that is just so unlike Trask. A fumble that just there's no excuse for. 3 major turnovers like that. On top of that, it still comes down to the very last play, a missed field goal, and like a crazy fall, like it looks like a horror movie's happening in the game. And before that, I mean, the infamous shoe throw. Yeah. So through all of those mishaps, it comes down to one bonehead play. And even at that, we still have a chance to kick a game-tying field goal and go into overtime. And I have no doubt in my mind, if we make that kick, we're winning the game. Mm-hmm. So just a really crazy game. I think this will be remembered for a very long time, that really this cost us the playoff. Yeah. Or did it? We'll talk about that later.
I know. So a couple questions coming out of that game. First one, Trask Heisman hopes. Washed away with that, or is he still in it?
I don't think they're washed away yet. They're hurt. We have to beat Alabama, which really we're on the fence of that anyway. The reality is he still has 30 touchdowns and 5 interceptions on the year. Yeah. He had 474 passing yards and 4 total touchdowns in this game. Yeah. So his numbers were still pretty outrageous for a team that lost. Mm-hmm. So he's not out of it. I mean, his numbers overall, he's still, I would say, just strictly number wise, he is pretty far and away the best quarterback in college football, as far as just statistically speaking. he has the most outstanding numbers. I think it comes down to those big games. Like if he can beat Alabama, and maybe if we lose to Alabama in a very close game, but his numbers just absolutely crush Mac Jones's, and I think he still has a shot. But he's not out of it, but it definitely hurts.
Yeah, I agree. I think it may come down almost everything may come down to this Florida Gator Alabama game coming up this weekend. Heisman, college football playoff, everything is going to come down to the Alabama Florida game. And does losing to LSU kind of play to Florida's favor here?
Possibly, but I don't really see how. I mean, the reality is, the last couple games, I think Florida has. It appears as though Florida peaked a couple weeks ago, and I didn't know before if it was a playing down to their opponents, getting ready for the big games, or if they just had actually peaked. So I don't have the answer yet. I think Trask's numbers have slowly decreased. Not like, I mean, obviously 474 yards and 4 touchdowns this weekend, but he's not playing badly. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't know. Their defense doesn't seem to continue to improve the way they were early in the year. So this Alabama team, on the other hand, has continually gotten better. And I don't think they're overlooking anybody at this point. They know what's at stake here. So it's going to be a battle. I think it's going to be a lot of points scored, but this game is going to be no joke.
Yeah. So I broke it down to 3 reasons why I think Florida lost. Well, 3 possible answers that you could give me of as to why Florida lost over the weekend. And I want to see which one you think is true. Maybe you think all of them's true. Maybe you think a little bit of each is true. But I have a belief of what I think is true. Anyway, so number 1, Florida's overrated and a one-dimensional team that's easily exposed once you figure out their one dimension. 2, this was a trap game. You had an LSU team whose season kind of rested on this game. If they win this game, it kind of resurrects their season in a way. It kind of gives them power going into next season, gives their strength in recruiting, because this is a marquee game. It's at prime time. Everyone's watching. If LSU wins this game, it saves their season in a way. And so they're putting everything they have into it. But at the same time, Florida is looking past this game into Alabama, so they don't put as much effort into this. They're kind of trying to coast in a way through this game. So it's kind of the perfect trap game scenario. Or number 3, it was just a fluke. LSU was a fluke. They played the best game of their lives, and it just happened that it had to be against Florida.
Well, of those 3, I definitely think it's number 2.
Number 2.
This is not just you don't have 3 turnovers and score 34 points if you're just a one-dimensional team that people have figured out. I think that's too easy of a response. I do believe that LSU played out of their minds. There were a lot of recruits there for both of these teams on senior night in Gainesville, and this is just one of those games where it just didn't go the Gator way this time.
Do you have an option 4 that I missed? Because you said of those 3. So is there something else that I looked past that you think?
No. I mean, I definitely think
it was just the perfect trap game.
It was a perfect trap game where Florida's looking ahead, and LSU was like, "This is our season. Like, this is if we win this game, it makes it all worth it."
Yeah, I think it's a mix of A and B. I think that it was absolutely a trap game because you were favored by 3 touchdowns and you lost. Also, I think that Florida is one-dimensional. I think their defense was definitely exposed. They showed lack of discipline in a lot of ways. Trask threw 2 interceptions. One was uncharacteristic, but one was still a pick 6. One was a fluke. But I mean, he threw 2 interceptions. You could say the same thing about Justin Fields when he threw 3 against Indiana. It was just. Interceptions happen because of bad choices or flukes. It's just they're part of the game. So I think that Florida is very one-dimensional, rough defense, running game. We thought they had a 2-headed monster when in reality they just have 2 pretty weak running backs. And if you lose one of your 2 dynamic wide receivers, you're really struggling to find open men. So,
well, I disagree, mostly because your whole premise was they figured out how to play teams have figured out how to play them offensively. I don't agree with that at all. I don't think a team with 3 turnovers, including a pick 6, scores 34 points with these statistics if they've been figured out. Their defense, yes, they have issues there, but I don't think you can say they're one-dimensional and teams figured them out. Would be just based on the fact that we had a chance to win in spite of all of these challenges.
Yeah. The thing about being one-dimensional is that even though they figure you out, you still do well. Like if you're one-dimensional and you do really well in one area, you're still one-dimensional. Well,
and here's what blows my mind is in spite of all of this, our rushing, even though we didn't run the ball a ton, obviously, Malik Davis averaged 11.6 yards a carry. Like it's just that's what I don't understand is that we just don't do it very often. We're like 80% of the time we're throwing the ball, but when we do run, it is very effective.
Yeah. So can I tell you what it reminds me of? 2018 Ohio State across the board. Great passing game, one-dimensional, and a really soft, weak, and easily exposed defense. Like, do you remember the numbers that teams were putting up against Ohio State's defense in 2018? It was a joke and ridiculous. But Dwayne Haskins was able to throw the ball all over the field, get 50 touchdowns, and just beat that part of the team, you know. But once you figured out that portion of the team, you were easily beaten, you know. And so I think Florida reminds me a lot of the 2018 Buckeyes.
Possibly. I mean, that's a fair comparison, I would say, at this point.
Yeah, but it all comes down to the Bama game this upcoming weekend. But before we get into that, before we dive into the top six, the College Football Playoff Committee, let's take a break and hear from other podcasts on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. We read one book a month and then we talk about it. Books like Stephen King's The Shining or Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. If you're on the hunt for book recommendations and enjoy sparkling conversation, come read along with us and then listen in.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
Hey, it's JD from the Hyman Podcast. Using a narrative storytelling approach, the Hyman Podcast was created to start conversations that need to be human. Week by week, I'll break down walls and barriers and make people wildly uncomfortable, all the while giving a voice to the voiceless and the marginalized. Consider this your personal invitation to be part of that conversation.
So let's talk the College Football Playoff Committee and the top six, top eight, whatever you want to go into. It's really only 6 teams that matter at this point. You can argue, well, I guess 7. I think Florida is still in it, Tim. The game of the week has to be, well, there are 2. Man, this is just, I am not going to see my family at all Saturday because I'm going to be in my basement watching football all day because it's just a full slate of great games, starting with Ohio State and Northwestern at noon. But then you have Clemson and Notre Dame, Bama and Florida. Game of the week, I think, has to be Clemson, Notre Dame with the most. Well, gosh, the Florida, Alabama. I mean, they both have playoff implications. Tim, which one are you? Obviously, you're going to be looking towards Florida the most. What are your chances here against Bama, Tim?
Well, honestly, I mean, we have a puncher's chance. I mean, it's not going to be an easy game. But the difference in this year versus other years is Alabama's defense is good, but they're not great. So I think this is going to be the best offense. I think it's pretty well known. This is the best offense Alabama will play this year. So I don't love that they have probably the best college coach in history. Like, I hate saying that, but I mean, I think we're at this point where we can come on. I get whatever. Anyway, but they have I don't know. Like, I think this game comes down to is how much can Florida's defense play effectively? Like, I mean, it's not rocket science. I understand that it's not groundbreaking, analysis, but Florida's offense is going to score points. I don't have a doubt in my mind that they will score points. I don't know why Kyle Pitts didn't play on Saturday. I know he warmed up. They said he looked great. and they decided last minute to scratch him. I don't know if they were resting him. I don't know if he truly is banged up. I have no idea what happened there. He's standing on the sideline looking like, put me in, coach. Like he seemed frustrated, like at halftime, especially when he wasn't playing. I think he is going to be the difference in this game. Do we have a chance? Am I nervous about this game? I'm not overly nervous about the fact that we can't play with Alabama. I just don't feel super confident in our defense. So it may come down to, can we get 1 or 2 turnovers and not turn the ball over ourselves?
Yeah, boy. So you say you're kind of banking on turnovers here. You have to force turnovers, or otherwise you lose.
Well, definitely we can't turn the ball over, no question.
Yeah.
I think if we can get a turnover and win, I think we win the turnover battle, which is such a cliche, I know, but I really think that's what it matters here, is because they're going to score points on us. We're going to score points on them.
Yeah.
I think we have to make adjustments, and our coaching has to be better than it has been, especially on the defense.
So you say that Bama doesn't have a great defense. What's their weakness on defense? Is it their defensive backs, defensive line, linebackers? What
is their secondary?
Their secondary is their
absolutely
weakness. Why would you say that? Outside of the Ole Miss game, they haven't given up more than 17 points all season. So why would you say their defensive backs are their weakness?
Well, they gave it 24 to Georgia.
24 to Georgia.
And I think that speaks for itself quite a bit, just because of especially at that point, like I couldn't even tell who played quarterback in that game.
Right.
They gave it 48 points to Ole Miss, 24 to Georgia, and 24 to Texas A&M. So that's not bad. But in general, I just think this is not the same team. Now, they've been better recently, of course, but they also played Kentucky, Auburn, LSU, ironically, and Arkansas. And that's something that played against us, though, too, is that you play a true freshman quarterback. Florida had no idea who this guy was. Like, and he played out of his mind.
Yeah.
So, different guy. If we play the same quarterback against LSU, I really believe we have a different result, too.
Yeah. Yeah, you had everything playing against you. Who knew that this freshman quarterback was amazing under pressure?
Apparently,
it didn't phase him one single bit to be in the spotlight, being prime time. The dude played out of his mind. It was such a fun game to watch, man. Regardless of what happened, any game ends on a 57-yard field goal with time left on the clock for the Florida to come. It was just such an amazing game. I'm so glad that I tuned in and was able to watch it. But man, what a game! What a finish! And
especially when you don't know at the end if you made it or not. You can't see. You can't see whether or not it was in the uprights.
Right.
And
you're like, what happened? Yeah.
And then the refs are like, no, and I'm like, it was devastating. But at the same time, I was like, what just happened? I mean, it was a crazy.
The committee gave you a favor, though. Do you know how they gave you a favor? They dropped you one spot. I don't know. I think it's baloney when you see. Now, I know that Ohio State got embarrassed and blown out by Iowa and Purdue, but we were basically taken out of the conversation those years. Like, they were the conversation just for the talking heads like you and I, but it wasn't a reality for Ohio State to make it to the playoffs those years,
right?
Because we were beaten by lesser teams. And so Florida gets beaten by a lesser team, a team that we talked about being like, okay, are they going to fire their coach after this year? Getting beat by that team, and they drop one spot. Justify it for me, Tim.
I have absolutely no idea what the committee is doing this year.
No one does.
No one does.
They're going by eye test. That's what it comes down to. They're looking at Florida and being like, Florida's a good team. That was a fluke. It was the perfect storm. It's like what we've talked about all episode long. It was a perfect storm against Florida, and the committee still believes that Florida is a great team and deserves a shot in the playoffs if they beat Alabama. They want to keep that window open for Florida to get into the playoffs if they beat Bama, because they think that highly of Bama.
I think you're giving the committee too much credit. Honestly, I think this is a ratings move, 100%.
Oh man,
I hate to go the money game, but what else? I just don't see it otherwise. I don't think you do this without saying, you know what, let's make this interesting.
Yeah, Vegas would agree with you. They're favoring Bama by 3 scores this week. So Vegas agrees with you that it is strictly a money grab, and the competition's not really there on the field.
Well, it's a primetime game Saturday night. They got to make it look like it's going to be bigger than it is.
Right.
But I don't know what the committee is trying to do this year. They are as inconsistent this year as they've ever been. And I would I would argue at this time that this year's how many games have they played is last year's who have they played non-conference. As in,
Yeah, I
the
understand.
non-conference schedule matters on a normal season in the same way that, well, they only played 5 games. How do we know they're good? And that's
Sure.
the same argument.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, if you start the season with 3 cupcakes that are automatic wins, then why should you belong if you play a week? Even like Ohio, we talked even preseason that once the schedule came out, that Ohio State schedule was weak. And then if you add 3-week games, I don't put a lot of weight behind this because Maryland, Illinois, Michigan. Those are the 3 games that we missed. If we played all 3 of those games, we got all 8 games in this season, Tim, and we won everyone by, I don't know, at least a touchdown. Would you still think that Ohio State's not worthy?
Yes.
8
And
games?
here's why. Here's
8-0.
why. Ohio. Oh, at 8-0, it'd be a different conversation.
That's what I'm saying. 8-0. That's what I'm saying. If we went 8-0, won every game that we played by at least a touchdown, you would still look at this and say Ohio State's not worthy at number 4.
No, if they win the Big Ten championship and win and go 8-0, that's a different conversation.
Okay.
But my point would be, or my argument against where they are right now, is historically in the playoff era specifically, Ohio State has had a tendency to get tripped up in one of those games, like Florida did against LSU. The fact that they're playing those games and Ohio State is not, should not benefit Ohio State. And that's exactly what the committee is doing, is they're saying, we're giving you the benefit of the doubt for games you did not play. They are assuming Ohio State will win the games that got canceled, or at least not discrediting them for those games. Whereas historically, you just mentioned it, those games against bad opponents, they have had trip-up moments. And so I don't like the committee saying, we don't care if you play the games or not, we're still going to put you in.
Okay, and I hear what you're saying, but when you look at Maryland, Illinois, Michigan, Ohio State would have been favored by 3 touchdowns in each of those games. And even
they were against Iowa a few years ago.
I understand that, but it's a different coach now. And I know that the different coach is Urban Meyer, but it happened 2 out of 3 years where Urban Meyer dropped those games. It was almost
back-to-back years, wasn't it?
I think it may have been. And it was almost like my conspiracy theory is that Urban Meyer planned those, similar to the Virginia Tech loss. And this is a conspiracy, that the Virginia Tech loss lit a fire under Ohio State. And I think Urban Meyer almost played that to his advantage, Iowa, Purdue weeks, where, maybe he didn't put as much film out there. Maybe he didn't fire up the team as much as he could. Now, this is crazy conspiracy talk, but I don't think that he wanted to lose as bad as he did. But I think he was okay losing these kinds of games, thinking that it would light a fire under his team. Because, it did. And every year that he lose that game, the team would flip a switch and play great. And then it would put them in the conversation. But because they lost so bad, it put them out. And I don't think he thought in any way that they would lose as bad as they did in those games. So I don't think Ryan Day lets these slip-up happen, especially when you only get 8 games. I think you're ultra-focused. And honestly, I think that this offense is too good to even let anyone get close to it.
Okay, let me ask you this though: do you think
that's crazy conspiracy? I'm not even going
to address the whole Urban Meyer thing. I think it's crazy. If that's the case, then he learned that from Tim Tebow. 2006.
I almost think he did. I almost think he did.
That's ridiculous.
Okay, all right.
Do you think right now that Ohio State's offense is better than Florida's?
I think it's on pace.
Okay.
Same.
Do you think at that point in the season, it is beyond the realm of conversation that Maryland could have scored with Ohio State?
No.
No, it's not beyond conversation, or it's not possible?
It's not. I'm sure we can have the conversation, but I don't think Maryland keeps up scoring with Ohio State.
This is a Maryland team who at that point in the season had averaged about 40 points a game.
Yeah. No, I don't think they keep up. I think we win by 17.
I don't agree, based on the fact that Ohio State had allowed 25 points to Penn State, 27 points to Rutgers, 70 points to Nebraska. Now, in hindsight, at that point in time, it was a whole different conversation. But in hindsight, those are really, really bad teams. They're giving up a significant amount of points to, and Maryland was on pace to outscore all of those teams significantly. I think this is a very potential upset game if they play each other.
I think Ohio State scores 55, and I think we probably have third team in by fourth quarter, and we give up maybe 35.
I just totally disagree, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. The point is, that's why you play the games.
Right.
I think that's why, not that I necessarily agree with it, but that's why after the game, we had some comments made by Florida's coach about playing games. And I'm not saying it was the best comments to make, but I also understand the frustration.
What a bad look. What a bad look. I understand the frustration as well, but Dan Mullen's been crying this whole season about what's not going on.
Mullen hasn't said anything.
What?
This is the first comments he's made about playing games,
games, but he said, that when he played Texas A&M, they had way more fans than what's allowed.
Which is true.
We need to pack the swamp next week. Yeah, he's crying. He lost and then he cries, and then he goes and he plays.
Disagree.
He goes and plays LSU. He loses, and what's he do? Oh, he cries because Ohio State don't like. He's just ridiculous. Making excuses and he's crying about different stuff. Like, Dan Mullen, you lost. Suck it up. You know what? How you get in the playoffs? You beat a 3-5 team at home in the swamp. Like, that's how you get into the playoff. Like,
or you get in the playoff by actually playing games, period. Not even against good teams or bad teams. You just play games. Like, that's how you should get in the playoff, by playing games. Like, this is so ridiculous for having this conversation of win the games you play. That's easy to say when you play 2 games. Like, that means nothing. Like, that's such a ridiculous conversation.
Well, this is a ridiculous year. This isn't a normal year. And so I think that the committee is doing the best they can. They look at Ohio State. They look at their offense. They look at, their defense is way better than they were at the start of the season. They're getting their feet under them. Wade had 2 interceptions this last week. He's finally getting on track as playing the way he should. And this team, nobody wants to play Ohio State. I can guarantee you that. Ohio State beats Florida by 2 touchdowns if they play tomorrow. I totally
agree with that. Here's my issue with that. You're saying they've gotten so much better since the beginning of the season. They have played 1 game since they almost got upset by Indiana. They have played 1 game.
Indiana's good. Wouldn't you agree?
I don't care. How can you say they've gotten better? How can you say they've gotten better since the Indiana game? They played 1 game against possibly the worst team in the Big Ten in Michigan State.
The worst team in the Big Ten.
Oh, now you're going to defend the credibility of Michigan State as a team?
They're not the worst team. I won't defend the credibility, but they're not the worst team in the Big Ten. I'll fight you on that every day. I mean, they beat Northwestern, the team that's playing in the conference championship.
They just got beaten by Penn State by 15 points.
Yeah. Okay.
So they are one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in the Big Ten. Who's worse? Rutgers?
Illinois, Rutgers, Maryland.
Rutgers beat Michigan State, just so you know.
Yeah.
So they're not worth. Michigan State might be the worst team in the Big Ten. And you're going to say you're a good defense now because you've gotten so much better since the beginning of the season by beating Michigan State.
You just wait. I mean, hey, all I can say is wait and see, because your coach can cry, you can cry, everyone can cry about who Ohio State has played. They're one of the best 4 teams. You can't. There's no way you can leave them out. Ohio State is going to get into the playoffs after they beat Northwestern 52 to what? I think they beat them 52-3 last year. I imagine something similar is going to happen this year. They're going to get into the playoffs. They're going to be in the top 4, and nobody wants to play them. I'm telling you right now, Ohio State can play with and beat every single team in the top 3 right now.
Well, I love your prediction. Here's my prediction. They will beat Northwestern by 50 because Northwestern is garbage as well. You just mentioned they lost to Michigan State. Who cares? Right. The difference is Ohio State still looks like there's a chance they might still end up being number 4. You better pray they don't, because you do not want to play. If Alabama beats Florida, they will beat Ohio State by 20 points. Alabama is the most complete team in college football right now, in spite of their defensive deficiencies.
No, I think they're great. And that's why I challenged you on what is Alabama's weak point, because I don't see it. Like, I think Alabama is great from top to bottom. I think so. We'll get to our top 4. I don't want to give it away.
Yeah.
But I don't think Ohio State is going to end the season at number 4. Just looking into the crystal ball as to these games coming up. So
well, you better hope not, because you would much rather play Clemson than you would Alabama right now. I guarantee that.
yeah,
And the biggest benefit these other teams have, who have had to actually play games this year against real opponents in general, but play games period, is that Ohio State has not had the same opportunities to gel as a team. So you may very well see situations where Ohio State has lapses in judgment or uncharacteristic mistakes because they haven't had their typical season, their typical gel
Right.
opportunities as a team.
Right.
So that's where I think it's going to be a problem for them in the playoff.
yeah. I almost think not playing games, like these other teams are looking at not playing games as a benefit to Ohio State, and it may be a benefit of getting into the playoffs, but it's not a benefit as far as playing the games, gelling. Like you just said, there's a lot of downfalls to not playing games like this, and it's part of that gelling, especially on defense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I worry about Ohio State in the playoff, but they have time to practice, study film, and hopefully they're scrimmage against each other, because I think if you scrimmage best on best for Ohio State, that's better than playing Maryland. That's better than playing Michigan. I think that Ohio State's defense is much better than any of the defenses they will see all season long until the playoffs. So you do best on best. That's your best option to getting into gelling as a defense to playing as a team. All right, so much to get into. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about Michigan, and what they're up against is Harbaugh in the hot seat. Stay tuned. Let's check it out.
I'm Dennis Maniloff, co-host along with the roadman Kenny Rhoda of the Next Man Up podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. Roadman and I do a deep dive into Browns, Indians, Cavs, Ohio State, and anything else that's on the sports fans' mind.
Hey everyone, it's Cameron Justice, co-host of the Orange is Orange or Browns podcast. Make sure you check us out for everything Browns. We got you covered before the game, after the game. Here are our takes, here are our feedback, here are our criticisms, and our praises. If you like the Browns, you're going to love this podcast.
All right, welcome back to the Tim and Shipe Show. Tim, Michigan called off 2 weeks in a row. Is this Michigan just waving the white flag like Kirk Herbstreit said, and saying, you know what, let's not just wave the white flag on Ohio State. Let's just wave the white flag on the entire season, because this is not our year. We still have another year of eligibility for these players. We got some games under our belt. Let's see what we can do next year. Is Harbaugh in the hot seat?
Yes and no is the easy answer. He is on the hot seat, and the school is basically saying, we're going to give you an out. Yeah. I think that's what Michigan sent a clear message of. We don't necessarily want you here, but we also don't want to fire you.
Yeah.
Their new like contract negotiations is the weirdest thing I've ever seen in college football, where they're saying, we'll give you an extension, but you've got to earn it. So it's a base salary which is significantly lower from what I understand. And then based on his success, which I'm guessing is pretty much all going to be like giant $3 million bonus if you beat Ohio State. Right. That's what I think it's going to end up being. It's basically like, based on your performance, you'll earn these incentives with a much lower base contract. And I think that to him is a slap in the face.
Yeah.
So I think they're basically saying, you should probably just go away now. I think I heard the NFL is calling you. And so he's waiting. And like, I've heard in the last day, he's come out and said he's committed to Michigan, but it's also like the early enrollment period is what, like 2 days away or something. So,
yeah.
So of course tomorrow. Yeah, you're right. So of course he's going to say that. Of course he's going to be like, no, I'm totally committed to Michigan until, Houston calls me, and then I'm
December
out.
December 17th. Yeah. Okay. So you think this was Harbaugh's last year?
Yes.
Next year he's gone.
Yep.
Who replaces him?
That I don't know.
Yeah.
I think this is very different than the Texas situation, where they had a long contract still for Herman, and a large contract, I should say, of several significant years, a lot of money. And Urban Meyer was their deal breaker. Like, if he didn't come here, we're going to stick with him for another year. And they just came out and said, we're keeping him. I think Harbaugh is one of those, like, you go ahead, we'll figure it out. So I don't think they necessarily have like the next guy under, like with verbal agreement or anything like that. I think this is more of, let's just get him out of here. We'll figure it out once he's gone. This is not working.
Yeah. See, I'm on the opposite opinion. I think Harbaugh is a prideful guy, And I think he thinks that he can do it next year. I believe that we're going to see at least one more year of Harbaugh on the Michigan sideline.
So you don't think if the Houston Texans call him today, say we have this plan within 2 years, we're going to be in the Super Bowl. You're the missing link. That he's going to turn that down. I think the pride in him at that point is going to be like,
no, I think that that's true, but I don't think Houston has taken that deal. I think, if I were an NFL team, I'd hire Harbaugh as like a quarterback's coach. Maybe I'm not even making him an offensive coordinator at this point. Harbaugh has done nothing to prove that he can handle a head coaching job.
Well, I mean, he took the 49ers to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, he took the 49ers to the Super Bowl, and he did real well with Andrew Luck.
He did.
So he had 2 successful years and 15 years of coaching.
I mean, he built the program up at Stanford from the ground up, basically, and made them into a contender. And since then, Brian Shaw did nothing for them. They've completely fell apart after he left. I'm impressed. I even know who the head coach was after Jim Harbaugh at Stanford. And he completely fell apart. I'm not even sure I said the right name. Brian Shaw might be a basketball coach. I don't know. Sounds right. But I'm saying, like, he went to the NFL from there, and he was fairly successful. I think he's very hard to work with, very difficult personality, and that's the biggest turnoff. But as far as results, he has shown that he has the ability to do it.
Not at Michigan.
Just not here.
Yeah, at Michigan, he has shown that he's worked better with Brady Hoke players than he has than his own players. Yeah. He can't recruit. He can't develop. And he can't win. He's 2-4, and that's it. Season's over for Michigan. Yeah. Ending the season 2-4. That's not a coach that I'm eager to bring on if I'm the Texans. If I'm a Texans administration, if I see that's college. How many college coaches do you see go to the NFL? Great college coaches. Do you see? I mean, Saban went to the NFL and failed, but you think Harbaugh is going to be able to jump from Spurrier. Jump from college, failing at college to then doing well in the NFL with a coach that's going to get in the top, with a team that's going to get in the top 6 draft wise. I mean, he's not your guy. And so if the Texans call, then Harbaugh should jump ship and go. But I don't think that's a phone call Harbaugh's going to get from the NFL.
So, well, and part of it is I wonder if he recognizes, even with his pride, that this just isn't working. Like, he has to. Yeah. He's a smart enough guy to at least know, right, I can't compete with Ohio State. Yeah. So at this point, it's like, let's just jump ship now when I have this opportunity where it's like, well, the school didn't give me the contract I wanted, so I'm just going to walk and figure things out.
Yeah. And if I'm his agent, I'm pushing him in any direction besides Michigan.
Yeah.
But like we said, Harbaugh's weird, and I think that he thinks he's better than what he is. I know he thinks he's better than what he is.
Don't they all, though, for the majority of these coaches?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I see it as a flip of a coin. I see him back at Michigan next year. I think they give him a pass this year because it's COVID. But yeah, I think he's on a tight leash. Short leash.
He may stay for one more year, but I don't see him signing a new contract.
Yeah. Whew, boy. So Urban Meyer on the hot seat. Luckily, the teams that we're going to talk about now are all in the conference championships, and they are not necessarily on the hot seat, even though I think Oregon got lucky to be in this. It should be Washington at USC this upcoming week, but Washington had to cancel. So the Big 12 and all of their great knowledge and all of their great scheming and planning has put Oregon in the conference championship against number 13 USC. USC's favored by 3. So this is our segment of our picks. This is it, right?
This is it, yeah.
This is it. I'm down by 3. Is that right?
You're down by 3 after I picked LSU to cover last week, ironically, and they won.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. So I had more faith in Florida than Tim did, and it burned me. So looking at this week, I'm lucky enough that we have 6 games this upcoming week. I tried to talk Tim into 7, but he wouldn't go for it. So we have 6 games this week, so I still have a chance to scratch and claw my way back into this, and I really need to. Because if I lose this, I have to jump on an airplane down to Florida next year and check out a Gator game with Tim Jones. And as much as I enjoyed Tim Jones's company, I hate the Florida Gators, and I hate the idea of spending all that kinds of money and buying Tim a ticket to the Florida Gator game. So I really need to win a lot of these games. If I do get 4 this week, then Tim Jones has to buy me a jersey next year because I'm still on tier 1. As you can tell, don't go with me if you are a betting man or a betting woman and pick Tim Jones, because this is 3 years in a row that I have failed at picking against the spread. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to make our picks against the spread right now.
The real question right now before we paint those picks is, how, Shipe, do you feel about Tom Petty?
What do you mean? I don't get it.
Tom Petty, I
mean, I like him. I mean, Summer
rest in peace.
'69, top
Rest
5
in peace.
probably of all time. Yeah.
He's from Gainesville. We play his songs every day in the swamp, every game in the swamp.
Oh, I got you. Hey, I'll like that.
Set you up for that one.
Yeah, that's good. See, you can tell I care very little about the Florida Gators because I have no idea. I had no idea Tom Petty's even from Gainesville, but I do like Summer of '69. So.
Roll back down.
You know what I think about this, Tim, and I think I've mentioned it a lot. This is going to end up being like a $5,000 bet to me because there's no way I'm going to be a stone's throw away from Disney World and not end up taking the family there.
Yeah.
So this is going to be my summer vacation next year if I lose this week. So
it's going to be so good.
So here's my question to you. Will you be okay if you pick every single game first this week? I have my picks planned out, but I may have to change some here and there depending on what you pick because at least 4 need to be different than yours.
You can do whatever you want. I already made my picks. I don't care what you do.
Okay, so if you go, you're going to let me go. You're going to go first every time to kind of give me a punter's chance here.
I will, as long as you at least tell me what you would have picked.
Okay, that's fair.
Does that make sense? Like it won't count.
But I don't have to lock it in there. Okay.
No. I'm just out of curiosity. I'll still go first every time. And you say, well, I was going to pick this, but now I'm picking this.
Okay, that's fair.
Cool.
All right. Put an asterisk by it, but it still counts.
It still counts. Yeah.
You still have to buy me a jersey if I go against you and win. Okay. All right. So week 1, you're going first every time. So Oregon at 13 USC. Tim, USC's favored by 3.
So I think in classic USC fashion this year, they're going to come from behind. They're going to win they're going to score 14 points in the last 2 minutes and win by 3 exactly.
Okay.
So I'm taking USC.
So here's the hard part for me too. I have 4 games and I want to pick the best chance for each one. So I kind of want to make my picks at the very end once I hear all of yours.
No, that's not how this works.
Okay. I'm going with USC there as well. Oregon doesn't belong. They shouldn't even be in this game. They're not good enough. And I think 3 is very generous. So USC is the obvious choice here.
Okay.
All right. Number 23, Tulsa at number 9, Cincinnati. Cincinnati is favored by 2 touchdowns.
I have no confidence in Tulsa. However, Cincinnati hasn't played in 4 weeks?
Yeah.
Before Thanksgiving, but Cincinnati's way better than the stupid Tulsa team. They're going to win by 4 touchdowns.
But they haven't played forever. Gosh darn it, Tim. Yeah, Cincinnati, they've had a lot of time to prepare for this. They could be sluggish, but I don't see that. Gosh darn it. I'm going to have to go against you on every single next pick. Give me Tulsa.
You're taking Tulsa? Okay.
I would have picked Cincinnati, but give me Tulsa.
Man, that's crazy. If Tulsa pulls this off, you owe them like a pizza or something. That's crazy.
Yeah, give me Tulsa there.
All right.
Next up, we have Northwestern at Ohio State. Ohio State is favored by basically 3 touchdowns, 20.5.
I love this because you already know I'm taking OSU. You already know I have no faith in Northwestern.
Yeah. I'm taking Ohio State as well. I think Ohio State by 4.
Your margin of error is so small.
Gosh darn it. I know. Okay. I have to take the ones I feel the most confident about.
Sure.
The next one, I think could go either way. So that's why I feel okay picking opposite of you.
Okay.
Number 10, Oklahoma. At number 6, Iowa State. Oklahoma's favored by 5.5.
Man, I feel the energy. You feel like nerves?
Oh my gosh! Like I'm on the edge of my seat. This is $5,000 here.
Yeah, this is huge.
basically.
So in this game specifically, this is the hardest game to pick for me of all 6. This is the game where I look and I'm like, this is classic Big 12. They could both lose. I don't know how, but they're both going to lose this week.
That's well said. That's
I'm taking Oklahoma in this game just based on the fact they seem to have gotten better as the season's gone on with your young quarterback.
Yeah.
So I think that Oklahoma, they're favored by 5.5. I think they're going to pull off a win by a touchdown.
Okay, that's good because I actually have ISU there, like legitimately written down on my page.
Nice.
Iowa State. I think Iowa State is the real deal this year. They're the best team in the Big 12. Just like I believe that Iowa, the team in the Big 10, Iowa should be in the conference championship game. I think they're better than Northwestern. But anyway, that's a different conversation to have. But yeah, I'm going with Iowa State. That's good. I'm glad you picked that one. All right, game of the week. Number 3, Clemson. Number 2, Notre Dame. Clemson is favored by 10.5 points, even though they already lost to Notre Dame.
They did.
It's huge.
However, Trevor Lawrence and several other players for Clemson did not play in that game.
Right.
So I am really nervous about this game, but I'm picking Clemson by 14.
I have Notre Dame. Gosh, Northwestern. I have Notre Dame on my page, Tim. Because there's no way that this game is not close. There's no way. This game is going to be close. It's going to come down to maybe a final drive, but it's at least going to be within 10.
So
Notre Dame.
I feel where you're coming from. However, have you seen what Clemson has done since Trevor Lawrence came back?
Yeah, against ACC teams beyond Notre Dame. Have you seen what Notre Dame has done? I mean, they
almost didn't they almost lose to like Louisville?
I don't know, but they beat North Carolina really handedly. Like the big games, they show up. So Notre Dame is going to keep it close, and I won't give. Yeah, they're going to keep it close.
Okay,
so, Notre Dame.
All right.
And your game of the week, maybe the game with the most playoff. Okay, tell me now. If Florida wins, are they in? Florida wins, Notre Dame keeps it close. Are they in?
Man, this is a tough one for me.
I know.
If Notre Dame beats Clemson, I think Florida would jump. Well, in Ohio, Iowa State has to lose. If Iowa State loses and Clemson loses, I think Florida's back in the conversation.
Okay. All right. So Bama favored by 17 in Gainesville. Well, it's a neutral site. Where's it played?
Atlanta.
Yeah, it's pretty neutral. All right. So Bama, Florida, Bama by 17, 3 scores. Is Bama that much better than Florida, Tim?
They are not, but I'm taking Alabama here because that way, if it softens the blow, if it does happen. So I'm taking putting my heart into this and saying, go at Alabama. I'll give you those. I'll take that chance.
Yeah.
Because if I'm wrong, then I'll be happy.
Yeah. All right. I have Florida written down. So this actually worked really well. So Tulsa is my big gamble here, the one where I think Cincinnati is clearly the much better team. But my only real sway here is Tulsa because I have USC, Ohio State, Iowa State, Notre Dame, Florida, and Tulsa. Those are my picks for the week.
Man, it's tough because that game isn't until 8 o'clock.
I know.
2 of those games are at 8 o'clock, and that might make that could come down to the season.
I'm going to have a 2-screen watch up this weekend. So let's talk our top 4. We've talked a lot about the committee, what they've done, but we haven't said our top 4 going into this week. And so I think if Notre Dame loses, they keep it close. I see Notre Dame being that 4th team. So I have Alabama, and then Clemson at number 2 once they beat Notre Dame, and then Notre Dame rounding out the top 4 at that number 4 spot, leaving out Florida, Iowa State, and Texas A&M. I will put A&M in my top 6 for the first time all season because I think they're at 5, and Iowa State at 6.
Notre Dame, OSU, Clemson, then A&M, and you know what? Florida dropped a couple spots for me, but they're still number 6. Because I don't like Iowa State that much. Like, who cares? They're Big 12. Doesn't matter.
So Tim, you're not even going off the committee at all on this. You're going off your feelings here.
I don't feel like I'm that far from the committee. The only one that I don't have in my top 6 that they do, I think, was Florida.
Yeah, but you believe that Ohio State is the number 3 team in the country and deserving of a playoff spot.
No, I don't.
Then why are they in your top 4?
Because they're undefeated. But this is not my final. This is not my playoff. This is not my playoff.
This is your playoff.
No, it's
you
not.
Just said Ohio State number 3.
Based on their record right now. But this isn't my playoff. This is right now.
Yeah, right now. If the playoff was tomorrow, Ohio State is the third best.
I guess I really am just based on their rankings. That's it. Like that has nothing to do with my personal feelings. I've already told you my personal feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, you just told me Ohio State's the 3rd best team in the country.
No. That's all right, though, because in our ad, you said that we love watching Florida, so that's cool.
And our what?
In our ad before the show.
Did I say we love watching Florida?
You sure did.
I said it I took 10 takes. I imagine one of those I said that, and then I restarted.
I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, but we do like watching Florida.
We do.
Yeah, we like watching Florida. It was a fun game last week. But we love Ohio State Buckeyes. We love college football. We love our sponsors, and we love all of our listeners. Thank you all so much for being a part of our show today. He's Tim Jones. I'm Aaron Shipe. This is the Tim and Shipe Show. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you next